what happens when Keanu Reeves, dressed in nothing but a simple gray t-shirt, a worn-out cap, and faded jeans, walks into one of the most exclusive private jet dealerships. He's there to quietly admire the finest aircraft, but instead, he's met with skepticism and outright disrespect from a blonde, arrogant salesman who immediately assumes Keanu can't afford anything in the showroom. To him, Keanu looks like someone who just wandered in by mistake, someone who clearly doesn't belong in this world of billionaires, oil tycoons, and royalty. But what happens next will leave you speechless. The moment Keanu steps through the automatic glass doors, the atmosphere shifts. The air inside the showroom is crisp, perfectly climate-controlled to match the elegance of the surroundings. The walls gleam, reflecting the polished surfaces of the jets, true airborne palaces that cost more than some entire islands. These aren't just luxury planes, they're statements of absolute power and status. Owning one isn't just about money, it's about belonging to an elite circle where even a millionaire would feel out of place. That's why, when Keanu appears, the reaction is instant. The salesman, a tall, impeccably dressed man in a tailored suit, freezes mid-step. His sharp blue eyes scan Keanu from head to toe, his mind racing to make sense of what he's seeing. Who let this guy in? The faded jeans, the scuffed sneakers, they don't belong here. Instinctively, the salesman glances at the security guard stationed in the corner, exchanging a silent message. Should we handle this? The guard, a broad-shouldered man in a black suit, hesitates. Keanu isn't causing trouble, yet. So, for now, he simply watches, waiting for a signal. Adjusting his tie, the salesman forces a smile, but there's a coldness behind it. "Sir," he says, his voice dripping with insincere politeness. "May I help you?" The way he emphasizes help makes it clear, he doesn't expect this man to be a serious customer. Keanu, unfazed, looks around with genuine admiration. His gaze lingers on the aircraft, appreciation shining in his eyes. Then, he turns back to the salesman with an easy smile. "I'd like to see some models." A short, disbelieving laugh escapes the salesman. He crosses his arms, tilting his head. "Models," he repeats, as if Keanu just said something absurd. His eyes flick over the worn-out cap again, then the plain t-shirt. He's sure now, this has to be a mistake. Leaning in slightly, his voice drops, as if he's doing Keanu a favor. "Are you sure you're in the right place, sir?" It's not a question. It's a warning. A polite way of saying, this isn't for you. Leave before you embarrass yourself. But Keanu doesn't even blink. He keeps his calm, his smile unwavering. "Yes," he says simply. "I'm in the right place." The salesman exhales sharply, shifting uncomfortably. He's still trying to be professional, but his patience is thinning. "We sell extremely expensive jets here, mister." He drags out the words "extremely expensive," making sure the message is loud and clear. This is his final warning, his last chance to let Keanu know he's out of his depth. But Keanu just nods, completely unbothered. "That's exactly what I'd like to see." Silence. The salesman blinks. Twice. "I'm sorry, what?" Keanu's voice remains steady. "I want to see the most exclusive aircraft you have here." The salesman stands frozen, as if his brain is struggling to process the request. He glances at one of his colleagues behind the counter, who only shrugs, equally baffled. Surely, this guy is joking. Any second now, he'll start laughing and admit it's all a prank. But Keanu doesn't laugh. He just stands there, waiting. The salesman's lips press into a thin line. His irritation is showing now. He wants to kick this guy out, to tell him to stop wasting his time. But what happens next? Oh, you won't believe it. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you love stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow, we have another unbelievable story just for you. What happens when Keanu Reeves, dressed in nothing but a simple gray t-shirt, a worn-out cap, and faded jeans, walks into one of the most exclusive private jet dealerships? At first, he's met with skepticism and outright disrespect. The blonde, arrogant salesman immediately assumes Keanu is wasting his time, that he doesn't belong in this world of billionaires, oil tycoons, and royalty. But as the conversation unfolds, something shifts. The salesman wants to get rid of him. Fast. He's not about to waste time showcasing aircraft worth hundreds of millions of dollars to some nobody who clearly isn't a serious buyer. But then, a small doubt creeps in. What if he's wrong? What if this scruffy-looking guy is some eccentric millionaire, a low-key tech mogul who doesn't like to flaunt his wealth? With an exaggerated sigh, the salesman gestures dismissively. Fine. If that's what you want. He turns on his heel, striding toward the VIP section, fully expecting Keanu to back down and leave. But Keanu follows him, completely unfazed, as if he has every right to be there. And as they disappear into the private viewing area, the other employees exchange confused glances. Who the hell is this guy? The only sound in the showroom is the sharp, hurried clickings of the salesman's Italian leather shoes against the polished marble floor. He walks fast, eager to end this nonsense as quickly as possible. But Keanu? He strolls behind him at an easy, steady pace, completely unaffected by the salesman's obvious impatience. And that drives the salesman insane. Finally, they arrive at the VIP section, where the most exclusive, unattainable jets are displayed like priceless works of art. The salesman stops abruptly, barely bothering to acknowledge Keanu as he motions carelessly toward the first aircraft. Falcon LX 900, he says, his tone flat, indifferent. Efficient. Comfortable. Italian leather seats. Handles transatlantic flights with ease. He's not presenting the jet, he's testing Keanu. Will he back out now? Will he finally understand that he's in the wrong place? But Keanu just observes the aircraft calmly, hands in his pockets. Looks great, he says, but this isn't the most exclusive one, is it? The salesman closes his eyes for a brief second, as if physically restraining himself from snapping. He spins around, jaw clenched, and gestures toward another aircraft with an almost aggressive motion. Fine. Gulfstream G7500. His voice is sharp now, his patience wearing thin. $70 million. This time, he deliberately emphasizes every syllable, watching Keanu's face closely. Now let's see how long you keep up this act. But Keanu doesn't even blink. Impressive, he says, nodding thoughtfully. But still, this isn't the most exclusive one, is it? The salesman stiffens. His polite mask shatters. He lets out a short, bitter laugh, one completely devoid of humor. You're kidding me, he mutters. Then, finally, he snaps. Enough. He points a finger at Keanu, eyes filled with cold disdain. Listen here, sir, he says, his voice low and venomous. This is not a joke. He leans in slightly, towering over Keanu, as if trying to intimidate him into leaving. You can't just walk in here and waste my time. His words are slow, deliberate, like he's explaining something obvious to a child. This isn't a mall. It's not a museum. His voice rises, dripping with condescension. We don't sell souvenirs. We don't cater to tourists. He gestures around the showroom with a mocking laugh. This isn't a theme park where you can pretend you belong. Still, Keanu remains silent. Just watching. The salesman isn't done. Now, he wants to hurt. We're talking about real money here, he continues, his expression turning ice cold. This is for real people. People with power. People who are part of something bigger. He eyes Keanu up and down, his disgust turning into something closer to hatred. And you? He spits the words out. You don't look like anything other than a broke nobody. Silence. This time, the room feels frozen. The salesman waits, completely certain that he's finally shattered this fool's confidence. But Keanu? Nothing. No reaction. No anger. No embarrassment. And then, Keanu smiles. Not a wide, amused grin. Just a small, subtle smile, one so calm, so effortless, that for the first time, the salesman feels something cold crawl up his spine. Keanu takes a step forward, his presence suddenly heavier, his gaze steady. Now, he's the one looking down at the salesman. And in that moment, something shifts. The salesman feels it in his chest, a strange, tight unease. Something's not right. Keanu tilts his head slightly, his voice calm, steady. Can I see the most exclusive aircraft now? The salesman goes pale. His lips part slightly, but no words come out. For the first time, he doesn't know what to say. His mind refuses to process what's happening. Keanu should be humiliated. He should have turned around and left. But he didn't. He's still here. Still standing. Still watching. And for the first time, the salesman feels something he never expected. Fear. Did the salesman just make a massive mistake? Tension in the showroom was suffocating. The salesman had spent the last several minutes trying to humiliate this scruffy-looking man, mocking him, belittling him, making it crystal clear that he didn't belong here. And yet, he was still standing there. Keanu Reeves hadn't flinched. He hadn't caved. He hadn't even lost his cool. Instead, he just kept looking at the salesman with the same unreadable expression, the same calm, quiet confidence. And that was what made the salesman's stomach twist. Nobody endured this level of contempt without breaking. Nobody. By now, a few employees had taken notice. The air inside the showroom felt different, thicker, heavier. But no one dared to interfere. The salesman felt a bead of cold sweat trail down his back. He couldn't back down now. Not after everything he'd said. He needed to finish this. With a dry, forced laugh, he narrowed his eyes. Do you still not get it? His voice was sharp, mocking. This place isn't for just anyone. He took a step forward, now fully committed to crushing Keanu's confidence. You might think you're impressing someone by standing here, insisting like this. He shook his head, smirking. But honestly? His tone darkened as he leaned in slightly. All you're doing is wasting our time. By now, the entire showroom was watching. The salesman's voice dropped lower, colder. This isn't a game, sir. He gestured around dramatically. These jets cost hundreds of millions of dollars, he sneered. Real people do business here. Real men walk through these doors. And then, he delivered the final blow. His eyes locked onto Keanu with pure, unfiltered contempt. And you, he spat, are not one of them. The silence that followed was heavier than lead. Keanu did not blink. He did not shift. He did not react. His calm did not crack. And in that moment, the salesman felt something worse than anger. Worse than irritation. Worse than disdain. He felt doubt. Had he just made a massive mistake? For the first time, something about this man's unwavering presence unnerved him. Who the hell is this guy? The salesman cleared his throat, pushing down that strange unease. No. He couldn't let himself feel doubt now. So he doubled down. He stepped even closer, so close that he was now mere inches from Keanu's face, and through gritted teeth, he growled. You've wasted enough time here. His eyes burned with venom. And then, with a slow, deliberate gesture, he pointed toward the exit. Get out. Another silence fell over the showroom. For a brief moment, the salesman felt victorious. He had won. He had finally put this fool in his place. Or at least, that's what he thought. Because then, Keanu did something unexpected. He took a slow step back. Not in defeat. Not in shame. Not in anger. Just a slow, measured step, like he was simply evaluating the space around him. Then, with a light sigh, he glanced around and turned his gaze back to the salesman. and smiled. A small, calm, effortless smile. A smile that carried something indefinable. And instantly, the salesman's confidence shattered. A strange wave of unease crawled up his spine. His fingers twitched at his sides. His throat felt dry. What now? He snapped, voice sharp, impatient, desperate to regain control. Keanu tilted his head slightly. His voice was calm. Low. Controlled. Are you sure? The salesman blinked. Sure about what? He demanded. Keanu didn't answer right away. He simply studied the salesman, his gaze unshaken, unreadable. Then, after a moment, he repeated himself. But this time, there was something different about his tone. A weight. A presence. Are you sure? The salesman felt a chill run through his body. What the hell did that mean? Why was this man still so confident? He should have left by now. He should have backed down. But he didn't. He was still here. And now, he was asking strange, unsettling questions. The salesman tried to respond. Tried to keep control. But for the first time since this encounter began, he felt something slipping. And he hated that feeling. And then, footsteps. Firm. Quick. Determined. The salesman straightened immediately, expecting to see a security guard coming to remove this fool once and for all. But when he turned, his breath caught in his throat. It wasn't security. It was the store manager. The blood drained from the salesman's face. The man walked briskly, his expression sharp, his eyes locked onto the scene unfolding before him. And in that moment, the salesman knew. Something was very, very wrong. The manager stopped near them. He glanced at Keanu. Then at the salesman. His brow furrowed. And when he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but it carried a quiet, undeniable authority. What's going on here? The salesman stiffened, scrambling to compose himself. Sir, he stammered, forcing an uneasy smile. But his voice came out shaky, uncertain. Everything is under control, he rushed to explain. This man. He shot a venomous look at Keanu. And Keanu. Keanu just stood there. Silent. Still. Waiting. And the salesman, for the first time, felt something he never expected to feel. The salesman just made the worst mistake of his career. The room was silent. Thick with tension. The salesman had just thrown Keanu Reeves out of the showroom. Mocked him. Humiliated him. Treated him like nothing. And then, his world collapsed. The manager arrived. And when he spoke, his tone was calm, but there was something in his voice that sent ice through the salesman's veins. What's going on here? Desperate to regain control, the salesman straightened his tie and forced a stiff smile. How was wasting our time? He scoffed. I already asked him to leave. For a second, the manager was quiet. Then, he laughed. Low. Short. But enough. Enough for the salesman to realize he had just made a colossal mistake. The manager folded his arms, tilting his head slightly as he studied him. Wasting your time? The words were casual, but there was something about the way he said them that made the salesman feel cold. The salesman swallowed hard. Yes, he stammered, forcing himself to keep his composure. I explained that we only sell to highly exclusive clients. People with, he hesitated, immense purchasing power. The manager raised an eyebrow. People with immense purchasing power, huh? The salesman felt his throat tighten. And then, the moment that shattered everything. The manager turned to Keanu. And for the first time, he smiled. Genuinely. Mr. Reeves, it's an absolute pleasure to have you in our store. The salesman froze. His chest tightened. His breath caught. Mr. Reeves? No. No, 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 no. His eyes darted back to Keanu. And now, he saw everything differently. The face. The features. The beard. The damn calm smile. Now, he recognized him. Now, he understood. And it felt like the ground had just vanished beneath his feet. That wasn't just some nobody. That was Keanu Reeves. The salesman's legs went weak. His mind raced. He wanted to justify himself, to explain, to say something, but his throat was dry. No words came out. He turned back to Keanu, eyes wide, desperate for some kind of salvation. Maybe Keanu would correct him. Maybe he would say it was all a misunderstanding. But Keanu just smiled. Because he had known all along. He knew exactly what he was doing. The manager's expression darkened. His smile disappeared. And then, his voice dropped. "I trust you've been treated with the respect you deserve, Mr. Reeves?" Keanu let out a short chuckle. But he didn't answer. The manager noticed. His expression hardened as he slowly turned toward the salesman. And for the second time that day, the salesman felt the blood drain from his face. "Can I have a word with you?" The words were slow, even, and absolutely merciless. The salesman's stomach dropped. He knew, in that moment, he was finished. But that's when Keanu delivered the final blow. His voice was calm, low, dripping with sharp irony. "You know," Keanu said, his smile never fading, "the richest people are often the ones who feel the least need to prove it." Silence. It wasn't just words. It was a sentence. An execution. The salesman felt an invisible punch to his chest. Because that line? That was meant for him. That was his judgment. Keanu turned to the manager, casual as ever. "Now then," he said, "shall we take a look at the most exclusive jet?" And with that, he walked away. Without looking back. Now who's really out of place? The air in the showroom had changed. Moments ago, the salesman had dominated the scene, showering Keanu with arrogance, with mockery, with disdain. Now, he was nothing. A shadow of himself. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. His entire body was tense, like a man waiting for a sentence to be passed. The manager stood beside him, arms crossed, disappointment etched into his features. After a long, heavy silence, he turned back to Keanu. "Mr. Reeves," he said, his voice sincere. "Once again, I sincerely apologize on behalf of our team." Keanu watched him for a moment. Then, he gave a small smile. "There's no need to apologize." The manager blinked. The salesman, who already felt utterly crushed, lifted his eyes in confusion. And then, Keanu continued. His voice was calm. Free of anger. Free of resentment. "I've seen this happen before. Many times." He turned his gaze toward the salesman. "And I bet you have, too." The salesman swallowed hard. Keanu exhaled, slipping his hands into his pockets. People being judged by what they wear. By how they look. By what others assume they can or can't afford. The words hit. Because the salesman knew. He had done this before. And now, he was paying for it. Keanu took a slow step forward. "The problem is," he said, his voice steady, "these judgments are never as simple as they seem." The salesman kept his eyes down. He didn't dare look up. Keanu tilted his head slightly. "You looked at me and thought you knew who I was." The salesman's throat tightened. "You assumed I was a nobody. A broke guy. A dreamer who walked in here just to fantasize about a life he could never have." A pause. A silence that pressed down on the salesman like iron chains. Then, Keanu dropped the question that shattered everything. "But what if I was?" The salesman's head snapped up. His breath caught. Keanu studied him with calm. steady. What if I was just a guy with no money? The words hung in the air. A dreamer with no means to buy anything here? The salesman was frozen. Keanu's expression remained gentle, but his words cut deep. Would that mean I didn't deserve respect? The showroom became so quiet, you could hear a heartbeat. And then Keanu smiled. Lightly. But his words carried weight. Because in the end, it's not about money. It never was. He glanced around. And in that moment, it wasn't just the salesman he was speaking to. It was everyone. It doesn't matter if someone walks in here wearing a $20,000 suit or a $20 t-shirt. His voice was clear. Certain. Everyone deserves respect. The manager nodded slowly, visibly impressed. The salesman? He looked smaller than ever. Like a man who had just been crushed under the weight of his own arrogance. Keanu let out a quiet breath. Then he reached out and placed a hand on the salesman's shoulder. His words were soft. You're young. A pause. You still have time to learn. And then, the final question. The question is, do you want to? Keanu Reeves turned a salesman's humiliation into a lesson on respect, but did he really learn? The words hung in the air. The salesman stood there, frozen, his throat tight, his mind racing. He couldn't answer. Because deep down, he knew. Keanu didn't need to say anything else. He simply took a step back, turned to the manager, and, with the same calm confidence he had carried from the beginning, said, Now then, I think we can continue the tour. No grudges. No anger. No need for revenge. Just the quiet certainty of a man who knew he had delivered the most valuable lesson possible. The manager gave a respectful nod and followed Keanu toward the private jet section. And the salesman? He remained behind, standing motionless, feeling his entire world spin. He looked down at his own hands, as if trying to physically hold the weight of his mistake. And for the first time, he felt ashamed of himself. But the story was far from over. Inside the store, everything slowly returned to normal. Employees who had barely noticed Keanu earlier were now whispering among themselves, exchanging discreet glances. The salesman, still pale and speechless, couldn't move. But while the tension inside the showroom was settling, something much bigger was starting to happen outside. A woman, who had been quietly observing the entire interaction from a distance, had recorded everything on her phone. Every insult, every humiliation, every moment of arrogance. She had captured the salesman's downfall frame by frame. And once that video hit the internet, it exploded. The aftermath was unstoppable. The scandal didn't fade over time. If anything, it only grew bigger. The media wouldn't stop covering it. Social media never let up. Millions of people watched the footage, furious at the way Keanu had been treated. The luxury jet dealership, once known for its exclusivity, was now infamous for something else. Arrogance. Prejudice. Disrespect. The store's name was dragged through the mud. Customers pulled out of deals. High-profile clients refused to be associated with them. And behind the scenes, things were falling apart. The company's board of directors held an emergency meeting, desperate to salvage their reputation. The decision? Drastic changes. A full overhaul of their customer service approach. But the most significant change? It involved the salesman. His fate was sealed. Days after the scandal, the salesman was called into a decisive meeting with the store's manager. The room was tense. The manager's serious expression made it clear this wasn't just a slap on the wrist. The salesman sat stiffly in his chair, his palms sweaty. "You understand why we're here, don't you?" the manager asked, his voice calm but firm. The salesman nodded slowly, eyes downcast. "I do." The manager crossed his arms. "You made a serious mistake," he said, his tone cutting through the silence. "You didn't just disrespect a customer, you damaged the entire store's reputation." The words hit hard. The salesman felt the weight of guilt pressing down on him. "I know," he admitted. His voice was quiet. "And I regret it." The manager studied him for a long moment. Then, he asked, "Tell me, what did you learn?" The salesman hesitated. Then, finally, he looked up. "That we should never judge a customer by their appearance." The manager raised an eyebrow. "That's it?" The salesman swallowed hard. "That respect should always come first." The manager nodded slowly. Then, after another heavy pause, he asked, "And are you willing to change?" The salesman took a deep breath. "Yes, I am." The manager didn't respond right away. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, considering. Then, finally, he spoke. "The store has decided not to fire you." The salesman's eyes widened in shock. I still have a job." The manager gave a small, knowing smirk. "Yes." A brief pause. Then, his expression hardened. "But not in your current position." The decision was simple. The salesman would be demoted from a high-status sales executive to customer service assistant. His new job? Handling every single person who walked through the store's doors. No exceptions. No status. No prejudgment. If he wanted to stay, he would have to learn the hard way. The salesman didn't protest, because deep down, he knew he deserved it. And for the first time since the incident, he saw this as a chance to start over. But what about Keanu? As the store worked to rebuild itself, the world was waiting for Keanu to speak out. Reporters hounded him with questions about what had happened. People expected him to fire back, to call for boycotts, to cancel the store completely. But Keanu? Keanu was just Keanu. When asked about the situation, he simply smiled and said, "This has already been resolved in the best way possible. No resentment. No revenge. Just grace. Just wisdom." Because for Keanu, this wasn't about canceling someone. It was about teaching them. And this time, someone actually learned. A story that changed more than just one man. The luxury jet dealership committed to change. The salesman was forced to face his own arrogance. And thanks to a single viral moment, a simple lesson on respect became something much bigger. Because in the end, it was never about money. It was never about status. It was about respect. And that is the true wealth everyone should strive for.